Welcome to the Heritage and Model Rail channel. In 2019 I videoed over 150 layouts at model railway exhibitions in England and Scotland. Here are my 10 favourite N-gauge layouts of 2019, from a choice of nearly 60. If you are new to my channel, start now and become a subscriber. Don't forget the bell icon for notifications. This layout is a bridge too far in N-gauge and exhibited by Peter Thorpe. A bridge too far was designed to feature the representation of the Royal Albert Bridge. That was part of a tribute to Brunel layout built by the Basingstoke Bodgers in the final of the inaugural Great Model Railway Challenge, as featured on Channel 5. The name of the layout comes from the fact that of the 3 bridges on the Brunel layout, this was the one that we were unable to finish in the time allowed. Except for the plate girder bridge sides, the bridge is totally scratch built from plasticard, plastruct, microstrip, water pipe, card, paper and a Pringles tube. The higher level main running line over the bridge is N-gauge, and the lower lines to Oakhampton and on the wharf are to 2mm fine scale standards. The buildings are a mix of those from previous club layouts, bought at various model railway shows, and some built from card kits. The points and signals are operated using servo motors controlled by Merg Electronics. The layout is operated over 2 periods, from 1956 to 1960, with predominantly Southern and BR standard steam locomotives hauling diversionary trains, and from 1968 to 1972, with diesels in an early BR livery. The layout is 10 foot by 2 foot 8 and requires 2 or 3 operators to run it. My thanks to Peter for supplying the information. Here you can view the N-gauge layout Marx Engelsplatz, exhibited by Bill Roberts. The layout represents an S-Bahn station in former East Berlin and is set in the spring of 1990, just after the fall of the Berlin Wall. As well as commuter trains on the S-Bahn, the layout features interzonal trains moving across the island, which was West Berlin. The layout is 20 feet long and consists of 4 4 feet by 2 feet boards and 2 2 feet by 2 feet boards. Main layout buildings are all scratch built, with the buildings on the back scene being constructed from kits. Control is analog DC. Stock is a mixture of Fleischmann and Trix. My thanks to Bill for supplying the information. Burlington Central, modelled in N-gauge and presented by Perth and District Model Railway Group. Burlington Central is a fictional layout set somewhere in the US Midwest. Based on the Burlington Northern Railway, along with 2 of its predecessors, the Chicago, Burlington and Quincy, the Burlington route, and the Great Northern, covering an area west from Chicago to Seattle, south to the Gulf Coast. The scenery on the layout is based on Colorado, Montana, Rocky Mountain areas, and it is assumed that this is where the layout is based. The layout is not based on any particular era and therefore allows us to run locomotives and freight cars from the mid-1950s to the early 1990s. At present, all locomotives are diesel, as by the mid-1950s most American Class 1 railroads had converted to diesel operation. So I'm here with Eric, and he's going to describe his layout to us.
Clifton and Lauder came about because I needed another exhibition layout. My previous one was life expired, and the reason I chose the location, it's a real location on the West Coast Main Line, and it's a place I remember quite well from my youth. So it's N-gauge, although the scenic section on the front does employ a fine scale type track system. It uses code 40 rail, but it's still to 9mm gauge, so you can run standard N-gauge stuff on it. The era I remember is sort of the late 50s and early 60s when I was a younger child, and the cottages that are modelled on the thing are actually based on the cottages where one of my uncles used to live that we visited quite regularly. The construction of the layout took about 2 years. The fiddle yard at the back, which was designed to feed trains to the front, I think there's 32 trains in there. That uses Pico code 55. Controls is, we use Kent panel controls through homemade control panels for the points and the track circuits. And the fiddle yard points work with diode matrices, so you press one button to send a train in and press the button at the other end to send the train down. So it's an in-out system, and that sets all the points for that road, for that track. And that's all done with diode matrices. There's 8 boards under the layout for those to control those points. Designing diode matrices, I've never done that before. And the other one was fitting the road system in on the scenic section. The way I designed the scenery was to take account of the existing roads that were around that area, and the challenge there was to take the Fowler model, which is basically a Mercedes-Benz, and try and make it somewhat like an English outline model, and that was achieved by using commercial bodies the likes of Oxford and BT. It needs three lorries to work the system. As one lorry comes in, there's a sensor in the road, so it releases the parking stop that the vehicle in front's off, so that drives off, and then the vehicle that's coming in stops on there and waits for someone to come behind to let that one go around. There's only ever one goes down the front at one time because the roads are too narrow. Trains are based on real trains, you know, the Royal Scot. There's a tender first 9F with a lot of empty mineral wagons that goes to Harrison Sides. That was a shunt trip from Carlisle, 2 or 3 times a week. And exhibition-wise, well, it all splits down into 8 boards and goes in 2 racks. It goes in the back of the van. And then a big box for all the bits and pieces, lighting and back scenes and things like that.
Here you can view the N-gauge layout Loch Tat, exhibited by Adrian Lambourne. Loch Tat is a layout based on the Loch Carron area of the West Highlands of Scotland, depicting the splendour of Scottish scenery. The architecture and buildings are typical for a line built by the North British Railway and distillery. The layout is 16 feet by 8 feet, with buildings that are a mixture of scratch build and kits. Some of the trees are made using lost wax casting. Control is analog DC and stock is a mixture of Graham Farish, Bachmann and Dapol. My thanks to Adrian for the information. This N-gauge layout is Dragonby, exhibited by Jeff Butler. Dragonby is a continuous loop set in the East Midlands northeast area. At 16 feet by 4 feet across 4 boards, the layout is a perfect showcase for scale-length modern trains in N-gauge and liveries that would be seen in the area. It has a 4-track main line and is operated by 4 operators in the contemporary privatisation era, featuring a constant procession of modern passenger and freight trains. These are represented by Class 60s, 67s, 70s and a multitude of HSTs and Voyagers. Buildings are all scratch built. Track and points are Pico Code 80. Stock is a mixture of Graham Farish and Dapol, although there are a couple of 3D printed wagons. All stock is weathered. My thanks to Jeff for the information. This N-gauge layout is from the West Sussex N-gauge Model Railway Club. This layout is another large multi-operator operation. However, the design concept is quite novel. It is a modular construction built to a standardised pattern. Club members own individual modules that are all 6 feet long and varying widths from 12 feet to 30 inches. There are 3 common lines running through each module, which are controlled from the fiddle yard. The module owner can add their own lines to suit the layout, ensuring they are isolated from the 3 main lines. The module owner controls their own stock within their module. When the club goes to an exhibition, they find out how much space they can occupy. Modules are then allocated a position in the layout. The concept is very flexible, ranging from layouts that are single end-to-end to over 50 feet square. The 2 main loops can be either DC or DCC dependent on the size and stock available. The design standards allow for rapid setup at an exhibition. At the Ting show, the layout took only 2 hours to establish. My thanks to Ian Redmond from the club for the information. Here you can view Dent Dale, an N-gauge layout exhibited by Bob Taylor, Wayne Webb and Tony Fraser. The layout is inspired by the moorland sections of the Settle to Carlisle Railway in the Yorkshire Dales. Dent Dale runs from the north entrance of the Bleemore Tunnel, crosses the Dent Head and Arton Gill viaducts, ending at Dent Station. The station and signal box have been reversed for better viewing. The layout consists of 5 boards and is 19 foot long. All buildings and viaducts are scratch built. The layout is analogue, controlled by 2 operators. Rolling stock is a mixture of Graham Farish, Dapple and N-gauge Society models. My thanks to Wayne Webb who supplied the information. Here you can view the N-gauge layout Scarlington, exhibited by Scarborough and District Railway Modellers. Scarlington is a continuous loop layout giving a generic feeling of the north in the late 1970s and early 1980s. It is a follow-on from the highly successful layout North of England Line 1, Scarworth Junction, also in N-gauge. After 8 years of work, this show is its first public outing. The layout measures 5.5 metres by 600 millimetres in the scenic area, with a further 300 millimetres for the fiddle yard. Buildings are a mixture of scratch built and kits. Bridges are laser cut MDF. The cliff lift modelled on the one at Scarborough uses 2 jam jar lids as pulleys to avoid tangling the string that lifts the cable car. Track is Pico Code 55 with large radius points. Control is analog DC throughout, with stock from Graham Farish and Dapple. The road signs were made by Sankey Scenics from drawings provided by the club. My thanks to Jeff for providing the information. Here you can view the layout James Street in N-gauge and exhibited by Steve Wright. This layout by any standards is spectacular and was my favourite layout of the whole International N-gauge Show 2019. James Street is an award-winning N-gauge layout set in the period 1958 to 1962. Designed for 4-sided operation, it takes 7 operators to run. There are 4 tracks which traverse the whole 22 foot by 12 foot rectangle. 2 operators control these. A double track has 1 operator, the terminus station has 1 operator, the goods yard has 1 operator and the dockyard has 1 operator. There is 1 person in overall charge specifying which trains will be run. 5 operators stand in the middle of the layout and the 2 other operators control from the outside. All control is analog DC. The 4 ships in the harbour are based on kit but heavily modified. Buildings are a mixture of kits and scratch build, with the roundhouse being a scratch build. All track is Pico Code 55. The layout has taken over 18 years to build so far and is still being added to. My thanks to Steve and his operators for supplying the information. To view more exhibition layouts, click on the playlist. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon.